Hello friends, I'm greetings for the day. Welcome back to another tutorial on ISTQB Advanced Level Test Analyst Certification. We are in Chapter 5 talking about software defect prevention and looking at the last segment of this chapter, which is 5.3, mitigating the reoccurrence of the defects and trying to understand what could be the best methods to identify the reasons behind a defect and how we can prevent the reoccurrence of any kind of defect. When it comes to preventing the reoccurrence of defect, it certainly matters that what was the reason when the defect was identified for the first time. Of course, when we talk about analyzing the results related to a defect identification, we certainly look forward to find the possible reasons why the defect have occurred. It could be certainly related to the phase of introduction or the work product, or maybe the individual or the process who is involved in doing that. And by having this detailed information, it can help us to prevent a particular defect to happen again. And that is where this particular topic is going to refer more about what it takes to identify the reasons behind it, or having some matrices which can help you gather these information, which can help you identify the reasons behind a defect occurrence. In turn, it will help us reduce the reoccurrences of a defect, which is, in simple words, a defect reopening over a period of time. So the very first segment right here to talk about is how do we analyze the test results to improve defect detections. So in a very nutshell way, we are talking about all those matrices which can help us identify the information, which can help us to improve defect detection as a part of the test process. So some of the matrices are being discussed here. The very first one is predicted versus actual defect cluster analysis. In a very nutshell way, it is certainly to look forward to have a comparison between the predictions which are made initially in the early phases of the life cycle, and after conducting testing, the test analyst identifies the actual defect prone areas and compare it with the predictions. If in case the predictions and actual matches, that means I'm pretty much aware of my process. I understand what kind of effectiveness we have and what kind of basis are we getting in order to conduct testing or conduct testing on. So let it be about requirement, the design quality, code quality, etc. But in case the numbers do not match, it certainly represents there are some new things happening which we are not aware about, or we do not have visibility to the quality of the work products which the testing team is referring to. And that is where it becomes very important that sometimes these information can help us to make our testing more rigorous in those areas where we found more defects than expected. Whereas the second metric here is to talk about defect detection percentage analysis, which is also known as DDP, where DDP is one of the most important test effectiveness measure for a test level. When calculating DDP, the number of escape defects should be limited to those that the test level under consideration could have detected. Where in simple words, all it means to say that when we talk about the defect detection percentage, we do declare some of the parameters related to it, that how many defects are we predicting to be identified as a part of unit testing at the component level. Same way, when we talk about interface testing, we have some definitions and predictions that what are we anticipating to be identified by integration level. And of course, my anticipation would be a little less compared to system testing, but if in case we are focusing and pushing some of the tests later to the life cycle, then it becomes another important thing to worry about, that are we expecting more or less number of defects at the system or later levels. Now the comparison is very simple, what you predicted and how effective you were at detecting those defects at the right level. Whereas the third thing here is to talk about structural coverage analysis, which basically assesses the extent to which the tests have exercised specific areas of the test object. So this is more from the white box perspective, talking about identifying the low coverage areas which allow test analysts to target the test effort in those areas as well. Increasing their coverage help us improve or discover new or previously escaped defects as well. When we talk about structural coverage, like statement, branch, or any kind of unit coverage, is usually measured by test tools. So just to let you know that doing this manually is very impossible or very hectic. So doing with help of tools could be a great option, but doing that is another way to identify the defects or predict the areas when we have under coverage, under tested areas, we can have the more defect predictions as a part of it. Further to add here, of course, we are having a few other things to talk about. That is test gap analysis, where we are referring to what assesses the extent to which the tests have been exercised, recent code changes, and this allows the test analyst to focus additional test effort in the area that are especially error prone instead of targeting all areas that have low coverage. So it is more of like prioritizing those areas where we may have less test cases created and could be of great help to put our effort on the other side of it, which could result into better defect detection. So the whole goal is about how to identify defects better, and thus we look forward to take all these considerations into account. On the other hand, of course, the defect arrival pattern is another way by which we can understand where we can find more defects. So when we talk about number or density of defects found in successive phases of the project, can be compared with pattern that describes the theoretical distributions of these values over time. A classical example of defect arrival is Rayleigh model, and it is a single peak and is skewed to the right, showing that expected number of defects found first increases in time and after reaching its maximum value drops down slowly towards zero. So the whole goal is to say that, initially we will have less detections, but as we grow or proceed with the process, later we will look forward to identify more and more defects, but certainly at some point of time it gradually goes down to zero, representing that the defects have been identified and there are no more defects being figured out at some point of time. Based on the analysis of such pattern, it is possible to infer the strength of existing test cases and the potential for their improvement. So this Rayleigh graph or representation will help us identify if we have really got a good number of defects identified or there are any areas which needs further more attention. To further add here, we are even deep diving on the second segment, that how RCA can help us to do defect classification. So if you remember from the previous segment, we told you about that in terms of phase containment or phase escape, the RCA is some of those details which can help you to classify the defects by identifying the reason behind it. And by doing this reason analysis, which is root cause analysis, I can prevent the reoccurrence of a defect. So when it comes to RCA, this is a very good technique to understand the underlying or fundamental causes of defect rather than only its symptoms. RCA will support the structured approach to quality improvement, and its primary objective is to prevent the reoccurrence of defects. So once a test analyst takes everything into consideration, including the RCA, we can work on the root. So rather than just finding and fixing defect, I can look forward to prevent a defect to occur altogether by working on the root causes, or sometimes it will help me to identify the reason behind it, which can in turn avoid the reoccurrences of defect. The most of the common reasons when the defect to reoccur is because we don't work on the root cause, rather we work on fixing the defect, right? So we probably sometimes provide temporary solutions or upfront fixing of the defect, but rather than working on the reason behind it. So RCA could be one of the great examples to remove the defect altogether. So that is where a classical RCA will involve subject matter experts studying a defect in considerably detail after resolving it, and then look forward to fix in a way that it does not reappear again. However, it would be very inefficient and time-consuming to have preventive actions planned for each defect, but one way to approach this problem is to classify defects and then perform RCA. By doing a simple classification, I can apply common methods to multiple defects. So say for example, if there are field defects related to code or misimplementation of code, then I can go ahead and apply a common improvement action to resolve all the defects related to coding. Okay. Same way, if in case we see that requirements are interpreted incorrectly or missing details, then I may have one control action to resolve these type of issues in future or avoid reoccurrence is to review the requirement and make sure that all of the details which are missing are incorporated now. And same way exactly when we talk about defect classification, it helps you to classify things into these categories, which can be of great help to avoid the reoccurrences. Finally, to add here, of course, the test analyst should support their organization in standardizing the software defect classification as well. That means let's not have the team decide their own way of doing classification. If you can classify this at the organization level, it would be a great piece of effort because it can even work with cross-functional teams. Okay, the only reason things are defined at the organization level so that the cross-project members can be on the same page or different teams can work together. This will certainly improve communication and exchange of information regarding defects among developers and organization, facilitating the RCA. Now, examples of defect classification methods can be any of the following, like orthogonal defect classification, which classifies each defect into orthogonal attributes collected both when a defect is reported and when it is resolved. Same way, if you want, you can even follow some standards like IEEE 1044, a standard classification for software anomalies, providing a core set of attributes or the classification of failures and defects. Whereas even severity could be of great help to do the classification, which classifies defects based on their severity, like critical, major, minor, trivial, etc. Or the last option which we can also have as a method is the defect taxonomy, okay, which basically is created at the organization level as a list of defects which we commonly identify. And using this organization level information, it could be very much made representative to your product or to your process, which makes it further simple and easy that what kind of common defects which we always find, and there could be one common root cause or sometime one common step taken to prevent from reoccurring. So put together, that's all what we had from this particular final tutorial. I hope you have everything well understood and well clear from this session. And that's pretty much what we have from here. Should you have anything else, feel free to comment below. I'm always there to address your queries and answer them well. Till then, keep learning, keep exploring, keep understanding the context. Thanks for watching the video, team, and happy learning.